Everybody, even remotely connected to physics, knows something's wrong. It's confused, it's disjointed, it conflicts with itself. There is a problem. The question that needs to be answered is, how do you solve the problem? Do you continue ahead on the path that we're on, trusting that Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum physics is the answer and you can find a little tweak later? Or do you have to go back to the core and fix it there? It's like that scene in Animal House where the baton is taken from the band leader and he turns the entire band down in an alleyway and they go down and hit a dead end. And the band just continues to play. We've learned a lot over the last 100 years. We have piles and piles and piles of theories that were put in place to basically put fingers in the dike of a failing model. It's not unlike what happened back in 1650, when telescope technology began to advance to a point where people outside of the mainstream scientists, outside of the Catholic Church, could observe the orbits of planets. All of the mainstream scientists, the best and the brightest, back in 1650, learned that the Earth is the center of the universe. That was an unimpeachable fact. So they start coming in with all of these really bizarre observations about the movements of planets. And the church tossed it over to the mathematicians and said, make sense of this. And they ended up with this incredibly confused model with the Earth at the center, the sun doing retro orbits and the moon's doing retro orbits and things reversing in orbit. Brilliant mathematical work. Finally, the church relented and let them put the sun in the center of the universe, and voila, you've got this really clean model that we use today. Same thing's happening today. All these guys learned these things in grade school. They never made it into the physics establishment unless they drank the Kool-Aid, unless they bought into the Church of Einstein. Those things are no longer debatable. If the answer to the problem conflicts with what they believe to be a fact, they can't get there. It's not a self-correcting system. And so what needs to happen is there needs to be an alternate theory introduced that starts a debate. We need to allow our young physicists to question Einstein, the standard model of physics. And once they do that, all these really smart kids are going to come up with some really interesting answers. We've spent the last 100 years trying to discover something guided by our current set of theories with absolutely no success. So maybe, just maybe, there's a first principles error that needs to be corrected before we can advance. So let's look for an obvious error. What is the biggest problem that our physics establishment has been trying to solve? We have two sets of theories that all other theories are built off of. We have quantum theory that's used to explain the behavior of really small things, and we have the theory of relativity that's used to explain the behavior of the really big things. The problem is that these two theories are mathematically and logically irreconcilable. Why is that such a big deal? Well, large things like the Earth, stars, galaxies are nothing more and nothing less than large accumulations of small things, atoms. Using grade school logic, we would conclude that the behavior of the large things should reflect the cumulative behavior of all of the atoms that it's made of. So whatever theory we use to explain the behavior of the atom should scale directly to explain the behavior of the Earth. Einstein started the search for unified theory in 1928, when the physics establishment elevated quantum from a probability mathematical tool to a scientific theory, much to Einstein's dismay. Einstein spent the majority of his career trying to solve this self-created problem, and he failed. We have spent the last 100 years trying to discover the missing link, with absolutely no success. Billions and billions of dollars and generations of our best and brightest have produced nothing. Quantum theory and the theory of relativity have, if anything, gotten farther apart. So let's take a lesson from the Galileo moment. Let's consider that the error might be embedded deeply in the core of our theoretical foundation, a theory that all scientists assume is fact, and therefore is no longer even questioned. Something possibly as simple as the Earth is not the center of the universe. Today's standard model of physics is built on two platforms, quantum theory and the theory of relativity. If you take the time to look inside of both of these foundational theories without theoretical or educational bias, one obviously problematic issue jumps out. Both of these theories are absolutely dependent on and will fall apart without theories that they call fundamental forces. Ask a physicist, what's a fundamental force? Well, there's the strong force, the weak force, the electromagnetic force, and gravity. Yeah, those are powerful forces. What causes them to happen? Well, they just happen. They don't need a cause. They're fundamental forces. Okay, so where does the energy come from that powers these fundamental forces? Oh, they don't need a power source. They just happen. Keep pushing a physicist for an answer, and they will finally admit they have absolutely no idea how these fundamental forces work. That's just the way it is. The best answer we've received came from a Nobel laureate, and he said it was the hand of God. Poetic, but not particularly scientific. If you go back and look at where these forces came from, you'll find they were all added when theorists couldn't explain a scientific observation within the constraints of the Standard Model. The solution to integrating the new observation was mathematically calculated. It was assigned a fundamental force designation, and after 2 generations were accepted as facts. These are all mathematical plugs. If they can't explain how something works, they call it a fundamental force and move on. This is exactly what they did recently when they discovered dark matter and dark energy. Left alone, in another generation, both dark energy and dark matter will be elevated to fundamental force status, even though there will be 0 proof that either of these exist. They will do this because they need these to exist, or Einstein's gravitational theory falls apart, and with it the entire Standard Model of physics. Today's Standard Model, and the set of theories that we base all of our research dollars on, the holy grail for educating the next generation of brilliant young scientists, is mathematically irreconcilable with itself, and it is critically dependent on sub-theories that we can't even begin to explain. Either of these issues should disqualify the Standard Model. We need to demand more from our theorists. We need a theory that scales directly from the behavior of the atom to the behavior of planets, to the behavior of solar systems, and to the behavior of galaxies, and not one that depends on a bunch of mathematical cop-outs. So let's walk through a high-level thought experiment. Let's start with the universe's one and only one building block, the atom. What do we know about the atom? We know that each atom has a tiny, solid, active nucleus. We know that that nucleus is surrounded by a powerful field. We know the atom also generates an electromagnetic field that extends well beyond the body of the atom. So the question is, where does the energy come from that powers these fields? And the solution turns out to be amazingly simple, if you do not allow a fundamental force cop-out. This is an easy question to answer because there's only one possible answer. The energy must be drawn from vacuum space. There are no other options. Therefore, there must be an ether. The ether must have energy properties, and this energy must interact with matter. The nucleus of each atom is drawing in massless energy much in the same way a jet engine sucks in oxygen. We will call this foundational energy clear energy. This is the only adjustment that we need to make. So let's apply this correction and see what happens. If every atom in the body of the Earth is attracting clear energy, then by the logic we used earlier, the Earth must be attracting large amounts of clear energy from this region of our solar system. And it is. As the flow of energy converges on the Earth, the concentration of the energy will increase, equal to the reverse of the inverse squared law. That is, every time the distance from the Earth is halved, the energy concentration of the flow increases by a factor of 4. As the flow converges on the Earth, the concentration of energy will reach a point where it begins to interact with other objects. This will result in a drag on all the objects in this current. Gravity is not a fundamental force. The Earth is not magically attracting us to it. Gravity is a result of an energy flow washing through all of us, driven by the cumulative energy needs of all of the atoms that make up the body of the Earth. It is the drag of this current that holds us to the Earth. The larger the object, the greater the demand for energy, the greater the gravitational effect. What is happening at the subatomic scale? As the current of clear energy passes, every atom diverts a tiny amount for its own use. A tiny energy vortex forms around each nucleus. As the energy continues to converge on the nucleus, the concentration continues to increase until it reaches a saturation point. Energy will begin to transition out of a clear state into an energy state that we're all familiar with. The electron field is established. The electron field is a static conversion zone where energy is transitioning from a clear state into a physical state. In this field, electrons do not orbit. They do not jump from point to point. Electrons emerge from this highly charged field and then dissolve back at very high rates. Each electron occurrence is a unique energy event, much like watching a high-speed video of an active thunderhead. The nucleus will harvest electrons from this field as needed. It is this energy that powers the atom. Protons and neutrons are not distinct particles. They are the same particle in different states of charge, constantly transitioning from a positive state to a neutral state. There is a current running through the nucleus from nucleon to nucleon. It is this current that holds the nucleus together, much like an electric lock. It is this current that generates the atom's electromagnetic field. So what have we done? We've simply extended the energy-matter relationship, E equals mc squared, to include an energy-space relationship. We've extended the definition of energy to include a clear state. With that one modification, we can eliminate the need for having to use fundamental forces to hold our theory together. And we've created a platform for a unified theory. This could be our Galileo moment, a simple solution to a complex, self-created mess. Scores of corrupted theories added over the last 100 years will no longer be necessary. Particle physics is a dead end, and we've been at the end for a generation. For the purpose of this short film, we will stop scaling the model here, but it does continue to answer many problematic issues with our current set of theories at all levels. It is important to note that the corrected model does not conflict with any true scientific observation. If embraced, it may cause a paradigm shift, and one that is greatly needed. We will need to go back to 1920, view all scientific discoveries and observations through both theoretical lenses, and then decide which one gives us the best chance of advancing. Far more importantly, by adding a massless state of energy to the model, we can begin to reintegrate the science of consciousness into the same model we use to understand our universe. What I would like to see is a wake-up call to the physics community. I think there are great advancements that mankind can see if we just allow the best and the brightest some latitude. Let them be creative. Let's go look for creative physicists. Let's encourage creativity. Conformity is not going to get us anywhere beyond where we are today. My hope is that by introducing a plausible alternate theory, we can start a conversation. That there's a possibility that the great man made a mistake, and that we have to go fix the mistake before we can advance. Eventually, there's going to be a paradigm shift. Science advances through evolution and revolution. A paradigm shift is a revolution. It is not going to happen in my lifetime unless there's a catalyst. We could continue to invest in the wrong experiments, looking for the wrong conclusions, to educate our next generation of scientists in things that we know are wrong. And our hope is that by introducing a competitive theory that's consistent with all scientific observations, it creates an opportunity to have a dialogue that may result in being a catalyst to a paradigm change. If we can displace relativity and quantum, it's going to give the best and the brightest a wonderful opportunity to go out and explore in areas that they're not allowed to explore in today. And it's going to be that freedom to go look in creative places that's going to come up with the next revolution of discoveries.